Anyway, we're down to 10 shows, finally! It's only going to be 2 more videos. So, let's get over to the randomizer. We got 8 randoms left, plus 2 end caps. First rando is going to be 1. The Missing 8. This is like an OVA series, I think. And I think it might be Wit Studios or someone. No clue what it's about, but let's check it out.
Well, gee, that's a interesting little world you got there. You got some world building's a little generic, but you got the spark of something there. Cute anime boy transforming into a weapon for a cute anime girl. You got something. It's just one problem. Just one tiny problem. You didn't animate it. Yeah. Now that's half true. Because the fight sequences look fun, and there's these really interesting, like, weird artistic sequences that look cool. But whenever it's just 2 characters talking, there's literally no animation. Like, not even mouth flaps. Like, just mouth open, panning shot, nothing. And if I went that hard on Berserk Memorial Edition for having shitty animation, it's only fair that I go as hard on this one for having no animation. And really, like, nothing interesting visually outside of cool character designs and, like, the fight sequences. Voice acting is kind of neat, but I really... Man, no... Just panning shots? Nothing? Really? Man. Wow. Okay. Let's move on.
Alright. Missing 8 off the list. 7 randos left. Let's see what we get. 6. Romantic Killer. I know absolutely nothing about this. I've seen the manga floating around in my local bookstores. Let's see how the anime is.
Alright, I just finished all of Romantic Killer. That was really fucking good. I apologize because I'm going to be really scattershot with my thoughts right now because I'm a little bit intoxicated. But, man, that was some good fucking shit. I guess I'll just get my 2 to 3 major complaints out of the way right now, because most of this series, I love it. It's awesome, and I'll get into why. But my two-ish major complaint, not even major, but mostly like, one, there are some moments where it feels a little manufactured in some spots. It's mostly in the beginning is where it is, where it's like, it really took me a while to like Riri as a character. For approximately 8 episodes, I saw Riri the same way I saw the stupid bird thing in Tamako Market. Not quite as bad as that, but that's how I saw Riri. And second major complaint I have about this series is I really didn't feel much for the side romantic interests. Like, Tsukasa is very clearly the main romance interest, and love him. His character is awesome. Do not give a flying fuck about Junta or the rich boy. Like, I just don't. They were very clearly secondary characters, and so I just didn't care that much for them. And third-ish complaint is how Stalker character is dealt with. But they do it in like a magical way where it's like, hey, you weren't supposed to do this in the in any way, so I'm kind of fine with it in the long run, but I'm still like, hey, maybe not. But other than those points, man, this show was so much fun. I love this. It struck me right away in episode 1, I was kind of like, oh, do I like this? Because episode 1 mostly front load. The main fault with episode 1 is it really front loads the synopsis of the story. It front loads like, hey, this is how this story is going to work. And I think that could have been cut back on a little bit. But what kept me going through it was the visual presentation of that, and we'll get to that in a little bit because the visual presentation is so fucking awesome. But once we get to like episode 2, that's when like the actual like real like character writing takes over, and just the moments of Tsukasa and Anzu just talking to each other and being like high school people sparking a friendship was like, wow, this is legit some of the best like character dialogue that I've seen in a very long time, in terms of being just like very natural and being very like, yeah, this is how people would talk to each other. This is how high schoolers would talk to each other. I very much got that vibe from Tsukasa and Anzu's interactions with each other in episode 2, and I fucking loved it. And that's how a lot of this series is. It's a lot of this series, outside of the forced magical interactions, a lot of it is very like, oh, this is just how people would talk to each other normally. And I like that, especially between Tsukasa and Anzu, our main OTP. Which, again, kind of feeds into the fact that the other guys in this series really are not contenders in any way whatsoever. Like, they try to pretend that they are, but they really aren't. Like, it's just Tsukasa as, like, this hot, tragic, hot guy that he is. God, he's so hot. Like, and that's another thing. It's very rare for me to be like, for me to see like a stereotypical hot anime guy and go, oh, he's a hot anime guy. Because like Junta kind of falls into that category. I'm just like, I kind of see it, but not really. But with Tsukasa, I'm like, oh, he's hot. Like, it's me like, as Squidward looking at Squilliam in SpongeBob and going like, oh no, he's hot. Like, it's that level of like, oh, they really nailed his character design and his facial expressions and his personality. Speaking of which, in terms of a rom-com with a girl as the main character, Tsukasa as the love interest is definitely one of the most interesting and most developed love interests that I've seen in a long time. Like, his aversion to being ogled by other people, it's very... God, there is so much that this series does with, like, perception and gender and stuff like that. Like, this idea that, like, he's traumatized by this stalker that he has dealt with for, like, it seems like several months of his life, probably like half a year of his life, that has gone on to shape how he interacts with other people, and how Anzu is like the complete opposite of that person, and that's why he feels so comfortable with her. God, it's just like, chef's kiss, Salt Bay, all of that. Oh my God, it's just so fucking good. I love Tsukasa. But really, Anzu is the star of this fucking show. She is pulling the weight of this entire production in terms of a strong female lead from a Shonen Jump series, by the way. Technically it's Shonen Jump Plus, but I'm gonna count it. So, yeah, Anzu is awesome. Like, that's another minor complaint. Well, major to minor complaint I have about this series. And like it really, this is one of the reasons where it was like I almost didn't continue the series, because it really leads with the idea of like this magical force being like, you need to have a relationship, you need to stop obsessing over video games and chocolate and your cat. You need to have a romantic relationship to increase the population of Japan. That's literally a fucking line in this show. And I almost gave up on it. There was like, oh, we're doing this, okay? All right. We're doing a Japan's population is going down, so you need to have some babies for us. I wasn't about that. But I think the fact that, again, if you're just now tuning in, the seasonal wrap-up show is spoiler-filled and everything. But the fact that it doesn't end on her being in a relationship with someone and just being like maybe I'll pick one of them, or maybe I won't. Maybe I'll just play my video games and eat chocolate all day. It was like the clincher for me of like, oh, that was just like a front that they put on for the intro to this series. Like, Anzu is just so incredibly headstrong with her ideals and how she feels about the people around her that it really doesn't matter what some magical force or what the other people around her try to force on her. She's just gonna do her. And for as much as I would have liked a Tsukasa Anzu ship at the very end of the series, I think thematically the fact that she is not with someone at the end works way better thematically. Like, I can still have that ship in my head of like, yeah, and then there's some like kind of like, oh, you still haven't gotten outside of the rules yet, you still have to pick someone by the end of high school, but like, yeah, whatever. Like, for now she has avoided the become a subservient housewife role who raises children so such and such. Because that is very much Anzu's character. She is not going to be forced into this role by someone else. When the time is right, she is going to choose to be in a relationship with someone. Hopefully Tsukasa. But when the time is right, that is going to happen. That's another thing that kept me watching with this series, because it's apparently it's adapted from a manga, and there's only 4 volumes of the manga, and this is a 12-episode anime. So I did the math in my head, and I'm like, you could squeeze that into a season, and that seems like it's what they did. So it's like it's the Vince McMahon meme, if you remember it. It was like, you find a rom-com that's kind of funny, so that's like the first panel, and the second panel is you really love the character interactions. Third panel is the manga's already finished. Fourth panel, you could theoretically fit all of it into a single season. And I think that's what they did here. And I kept thinking for the entire time, I was like, oh, she's going to end up with someone. It's obviously going to be Tsukasa. But I do really like the flip of, no, she's going to pick someone whenever she wants to pick someone. Which by the last 3 episodes of this show go so fucking hard with agency, with gender dynamics, with like relationship dynamics. Like the last 2 episodes are really when the stalker subplot takes center stage. And that subplot really, like, we've been getting bits and pieces of Tsukasa's backstory throughout this whole season, and the last 2 episodes just really hit you full fucking force with it, and it's just so fun and gripping and enticing, and I fucking love it. It's like soap opera-ish in how melodramatic and enrapturing it is. But I do want to give special attention to episode 10 in particular, because that's like the first half of episode 10 is like the Saki episode. Saki is Anzu's like girl best friend in this show, and she's just kind of been playing a support role for the whole time. And then you get this episode of like her backstory and how she was like fucked with by this other popular dude in class, and how Anzu just stood up for her in the end. Like, it's really like, yeah, push that fucking high school patriarchy shit into the fucking dirt. Pummel it in the fucking dirt. Let's fucking go. I love this show, man. God. It's so fun. The character interactions are so genuine, despite the forced magical interference. Like, for as obviously forced as some of the interactions are, once the interactions start happening, they appear very genuine and like, oh, this is just how people would talk in this situation. So, I still don't particularly care for any of the love interests outside of Tsukasa, but for the role that they serve them very well. Especially, and now I'm finally getting to the visual presentation of this, and this is probably what kept me going through episode 1, was the way the visuals were presented. Now, it's a little scattish. I'm not going to say across the board the visuals are great, because like there are a lot of moments where it's just like character, background, they're not particularly on the same plane of existence. But what kept me going is that the character expressions and the character movements are so incredibly expressive and fluid that I was seeing stuff that I had legit never seen in anime before. The way that these characters move, so incredibly cartoony in a lot of instances. Before we move on to the visuals, there's one other point I want to talk about with the story, where it's like this series takes out a part of magical rom-coms that I fucking hate. Like, with a lot of magical rom-coms, when there's like a magical being present, a lot of the times the character who sees the magical being has to like pretend that they're not seeing the magical being. And this show just removes that entirely, where like the magical being is like, by the way, when I'm talking to you and you're talking to me, everyone else doesn't see that shit, and just the blanks are filled in their head. And I loved that. I fucking loved that. Because not doing that is one of my least favorite things about magical rom-coms. I just don't like it. I don't like that characters have to put up with that shit in like when they have to balance that with regular rom-com scenarios. So just doing away with that entirely was a A++ in my books. Thank fucking God. And it also led to some really fucking hilarious visual gags where Anzu is just beating the ever-loving shit out of this potato chip plushie Riri is a character I love to hate until the last like 2 episodes where Riri's okay again. But yes, the visual presentation, the expressiveness of the character designs, the way they're able to just break away and just do these insanely comedic movements, the like pull the obstinate hyper masculine expressions that Anzu pulls out in order to stave off her romantic encounters. Loved that. And also, red-haired anime girl with wild hair that she can't like completely tame. That is just a mood, and that is one of my favorite types of character designs. I mildly related, but I grew up on Kim Possible, so yeah, I fuck with that hard. So man, yeah, this show fucking rules. I love it. The only like super major downside to it for me is that I don't get a definitive ship at the end of it. But also, that is part of the theme of it, is that there is no major ship at the end of it because she's going to get to decide at the end. It's just my inner like weeb OTP thing going like, oh, but I want Anzu X Tsukasa. I want that. And maybe it'll happen. But she gets to decide that. And I think that's really the most important takeaway from this series is, despite all these magical circumstances, despite all of the guys flowing into her life. Oh, I completely forgot about the other childhood friend who comes back into her life, who is very obviously not going to be a major love interest, but is there nonetheless, and he's probably the most like melodramatic character of the bunch, but I still loved how he was presented in terms of the group dynamic of all the people around him. Despite all of these forces pressing down on her, Anzu still is adamant about retaining her agency. And yeah, maybe she'll get a cute boyfriend slash husbando in the future. Or maybe she'll just stick to her video games and her cat and her chocolate. That's her choice. And I fucking love the way that this show ended for that. Because of that. Even though I am very much the kind of guy who wants a ship at the end of the series, which is why I was so lenient about the ending of Megaton Musashi. Despite how garbage the last 5 episodes were, it still gave me my ship at the end. But it's even bolder to completely buck ships entirely and say, no, the woman gets to choose. And that's how I'll end this. She gets to choose, and that's what makes the series so great. So let's go ahead and put this on the list.
Alright, Romantic Killer is complete. And we're scrolling way up this list. And we're going to put it just above Licorice Recoil. We're going to put this real high up on the list. Just barely outside of the top 10 at number 11, but you get a decent 8. That was a damn good show. Alright, so we got 2 more randoms for this video, so let's figure out what those... The next random is... It is 2. And 2 is Shinobi no Ikkoku. Literally no clue what this is whatsoever, so let's find out.
Have you ever seen a show that's almost good? Like a show that's got the bones of something passable, but it just doesn't put in the effort to actually be good? That is Shinobi no Itoki. I made it about 3/4 through the first episode, and it is just... I see the bare bones of a decent, like, shinobi thriller action plot. But the characters are just so bland and uninteresting. I just can't be bothered to care about them or care about where any of their stories are going. The animation is even blander. It's not incompetent by any stretch, but it is so bare bones and uninteresting in its presentation. Like, I didn't think I would ever get to a point where I would see an anime girl in just her bra and panties and be like, wow, this really isn't attractive in any way. I wish it was. And I'm a horny motherfucker, let me be clear. So, yeah. This was boring. Let's move on.
Alright, Shinobi no Itoku is off the list. One more random for this video. Let's see what it is. 5. Exception. This is another Netflix one, I think. Let's figure out how it do.
Dear modern anime industry, please stop putting Yoshitaka Amano on new projects. It doesn't work. So yeah, I got about 2/3 through the first episode of Exception. Looks like fucking ass. And it didn't have to, because, like, I could see, like, Yoshitaka Amano's not a bad designer. He's still a good designer, and his, like, with the exception of the, like, guy in the purple in this, the designs in this show are not bad. But they have, when you have a Yoshitaka Amano design, it takes a lot of care to make that design look good in motion. And if you're just gonna make really shitty CG models, it's not gonna fucking work. The characters move like fucking wobbly robots. The frame rate is completely fucked, and there are some points where it's just fucking stuttering. The color design is just so way too blue, and it's just not appealing. Now, there are some moments where the color design looked okay, but overall it's not great. And it's unfortunate because I think there's there's probably a decent story here. It feels a little generic. Like it's just kind of throwing a bunch of concepts together that we've already seen done better in other places. Like, they're going out to terraform another planet. Presumably there's going to be life on that planet that's already there that they're going to have to deal with. They are doing a kind of a Ghost in the Shell thing where they are just, where their original, but their memories have been implanted into basically 3D printed humans. One of the bodies gets fucked up, so immediately the first conflict of the show is, do we kill this thing before it wakes up and print a new one, or is that murder? And they come to a decision pretty fucking quickly on that, actually. a lot of stuff that you've seen in other places, and I don't think it's going to be done any better here than it has been before. Especially because it looks like cartoony ass, and so whenever something like serious is happening, it's hard to take it seriously. So, let's move on.
Alright, exception is off the list, which means it's finally time for Bocchi the Rock. Let's fucking go!
Alright, I just finished all of Bocchi the Rock. That was a hell of a fun time. I don't think there was any question at all that I was going to enjoy this series. Is fun. It's a fun slice of life music show. Speaking of that, let's just jump right into that. The music, pretty dang solid for this one. It's not like super stand out in term, like it's pretty standard like J-rock with yeah, just kind of a light feel to it. But I did like the songs. I did like them quite a lot. Like the first ED Distortion, I think it is. Fucking love that. That's the hook on that is so goddamn good. I was just like banging my head to it the whole time, just tapping my foot, just so catchy and upbeat. And going along with that, the music performances were really solid too. Especially, I liked when the way that it portrayed like not good performances. Like they felt like very realistic not good performances. Like that, just like when the band's like not playing together, or if someone's just like out of it or something. It was, I really liked the presentation of that. And when the band is like together and really good, man, they're really fucking good. Like I think it's episode 8 would probably be my favorite performance. Just the Bocchi solo lead-in was just so dang powerful. Really loved the visual portrayal of these performances was really solid too. Just so incredibly detailed with the fingering and the movement of the characters and the instruments and all of that. That stuff was so fucking good. There were a few moments where it felt like a little bit off, mostly just because it was just doing so much all the time. Which is something that I definitely have to commend this series for. It is so immensely ambitious in what it is trying to do. This is easily one of the best looking shows of 2022. I would put it up, like, especially in terms of, like, being ambitious with its presentation. Like, I'm trying to think of, like, the other, like, best looking, like, just in terms of sheer ambition, like, One Piece Film Red, I would put it up there with that. Really, in terms, like, this, I wouldn't say, like, the overall animation is movie quality, but the risks that it takes with the animation is definitely movie quality, and it really shoots for it a lot of the time. The character acting in the show is so goddamn good, so bouncy and like light. It really like it's like that, a really nice blend of like realism and things you can only do in animation, movements where you can only make it look cool with animation. Just the bounciness of the characters, the expressions, the constant style breaks, even within the like traditional like drawn 2D medium, and then of course outside of the traditional 2D medium, it's so like, what doesn't this show do? Like, I think the only thing it doesn't do that I'm familiar with is like
paint on glass animation. But there actually is one scene where I think it might have done that. I'm not entirely sure though. But like, it does stop motion, it does live action, it does all of these weird abstract breaks. It does like the stick puppet things from episode 9. Is it 18 or 19 of? I think it's episode 19 of Karekano with like the stick puppets. It does that for a little bit. And a lot of these like break moments feel very like music video-esque in a lot of ways. Like there's this scene of like Bocchi just kind of doing like a walking animation, and like the backdrop faded in is like shots of like the water and like a bird soaring, and it's like, this just feels like a really like cheesy music video, and I love it. The visual like metaphors are so fucking good, just the way it like, it's really hard to describe just how this show does everything. It really does. In terms of like the animation, it really does do everything. And there are a few trade-offs, like sometimes it has like a total lack of attempt to composite things, like probably the guitar store at in the last episode is probably the best example of this, where it's like very clearly just the characters on top of the guitar store backdrop. But that's like a stylistic choice in anime at this point that like a lot of especially slice of life shows go out of their way to make it look like that. Like they do it in A Place Further Than the Universe, they do it in Comic Girls. So it's just something I'm personally not like a fan of. So I would much rather them look like they are in the shop, but the shop still looks cool, so I'll give it that. Yeah, goddamn, this is definitely a feast for the eyes kind of show. Supported by some pretty solid character writing too. Really, I liked Bocchi quite a lot. She definitely stands out from the typical like disaster moe blob ball of social anxiety character archetype. Like she's definitely in the vein of someone like Kaos from Comic Girls, or Shamiko from Machikado Mazoku. But I do like that she has like this kind of hidden arrogance to her in some ways, like where that only comes out in like very specific situations, where she's like, oh well, if I just do this thing, then of course everyone's going to like me. And then obviously that doesn't follow through, and then she gets massively depressed in very hilarious ways. The ways that Bocchi just breaks throughout this entire series are very funny. Like even up to the very end with that like puppet bit at the end, so fucking funny. Yeah, just really liked Bocchi as a character, and seeing her like grow just a little bit by the end of this series. Like very small but noticeable baby steps as this series goes on. And I'd like that she is like comes together under the right kind of pressure character. It reminds me of like I'm not a particularly social guy myself. I do have a bit of trouble just talking to people a lot of times, but like there were moments in the show where it reminded me of when I was at my first job at a fast food place, food place, and one of the guys who had been there longer told me, he's like, you really like come together under pressure. Like when there's just a bunch of orders, I would just like buckle down and just immediately just like pace everything out the way that it would be most efficient.
And so, but like Bocchi's like under pressure moments remind me of that a little bit. So that I've found that extremely relatable in this, like in episode 8 when she just busts out that solo when the band is like starting to fall apart just to revitalize everybody. So I found that really enjoyable. Love the whole cast of this show. The two different brands of bubbly brightness between Nijika and Kita. Ryo is so cool and so fun. She's like Rin from Yuru Camp, but like cooler and goofier in some ways, but like less extroverted also, or less introverted, I should say. Actually, no, she's not like Rin at all. It's probably just the blue hair that made me think of that. But she was an absolute delight. Loved all the side characters. What's the drunk's name? Kikuri. I understand why the internet loves her now, even though she barely shows up in this show. Like she's got maybe like 3/4 of an episode of screen time, period. But she definitely leaves an impression. Oh, that was another. I loved like the psychedelic rock track that they play in that. So fucking fun. I wish we had gotten some punk rock in this. I would have loved to see some punk rock, some J-punk. But I'm happy with the tracks that we got. Is there anything else I want to say about the story? Not particularly. I mean, it's just like the story is a pretty straightforward slice of lifey music, cute girls do cute things show. Obviously this, everyone knows this already, but this show is first and foremost an animation spectacle. That's not to say that the writing is bad or anything, but the animation just massively overpowers anything from the story. There were like a few gripes I had with the story in some places. Like in particular in the first episode, I was hoping that it would be Bocchi who would would be kind of forced to initiate an interaction with Nijika. Because like a whole big chunk of the episode is her just waiting for other people to notice her and then nothing happens. So I would have liked that change a little bit more. But yeah, aside from that, good show. I think maybe almost a year of hype now that I've put off watching this show has maybe built it up a little too much for me, because like, again, this is a really damn good show, but like, I don't know where I'm gonna I don't know if this will break like top 5 for the year for me. It'll definitely be top 10. I'm pretty sure of that. But, well, you know what? Let's go to the list and find out.
Alright, Bocchi the Rock is finished. I'm going to scroll up to the top. Unfortunately, it's going to land just outside of the top 5 for the year. I guess I just didn't vibe with it quite as strongly as everyone else, but you know what? It still gets a strong 8. Very close to being a light 9. I think it was like, where did I put it on here? Yeah, like, it's like pretty up there in my strong 8s. So, very, very close to being a light 9. Really dang good show.